All right, let's dive into this explainer and unpack the terrifying but honestly deeply fascinating survival mechanics of Kanwar Village. What we're looking at here isn't just your run-of-the-mill scary story. No, it is a meticulously structured system of survival against a very real supernatural threat. We're going to break down exactly what happens when the sun goes down in this village, the intense psychological warfare at play, and the brilliant, almost scientific way some of these villagers have figured out how to fight back.
Imagine living in a place where the setting sun doesn't just bring darkness, it brings an absolute, non-negotiable deadline for your life. Every single day, a warning call echoes through the streets. It's almost 7 p.m. Head to your homes. And guys, this isn't a friendly suggestion. It's a strict mandate for survival. The residents of Khandawa don't just casually stroll home after work, they literally race against a ticking clock, knowing for an absolute fact that being caught outside after that specific minute means certain death.
Section 1. The 7 p.m. deadline. This daily deadline creates a ticking clock of terror, marking a rapid, intense transition from normal everyday life to absolute panic. Think about it. At 6 p.m., people are drinking tea, the shops are open, everything is completely fine. But fast forward to 6:50 p.m., the warning bells start ringing, and it triggers this massive, immediate psychological shift. Because by exactly 7 p.m., the entire village has to be in total lockdown. There's literally zero margin for error here. If you're delayed getting back from the city, like the villager Rana Saw and his wife Nandini were, you are trapped right in the danger zone.
So, surviving past 7 p.m. means strictly following this uncompromising 3-step daily procedure. Getting inside and locking the doors, that seems pretty obvious, right? But it's that third step, drawing the curtains tightly, that really reveals the true terrifying nature of the threat. They aren't just putting up curtains for a bit of privacy. They draw them so they cannot see, cannot speak to, and crucially, cannot be manipulated by whatever is waiting out there in the dark.
And here is where it gets truly horrific. The monsters hunting these villagers, they're actually their own deceased neighbors and loved ones. These entities are known as the Bashinde. The curse of Kanwa operates kind of like a supernatural infection. If you die outside after 7 p.m., you don't just pass away. You're recruited. You become one of the Bashinde yourself, forced to return night after night to hunt the very people you once loved.
Now, here is exactly where human psychology works against them. Believe it or not, Khandwa actually experienced a 7-month streak of safety, 7 whole months without a single incident. Naturally, this lured some of the villagers into a very dangerous false sense of security. We see a young boy named Dev listening to his father, Rana Saw, strictly enforce the lockdown rules, but other villagers are just brushing it off as pure paranoia because, hey, nothing has happened recently. But as we'll see in Khandwa, complacency is a literal death sentence. The nightmare can return to their doorsteps on any given night.
Section 2. Psychological dread and mimicry.
The sheer psychological dread of this curse really lies in their primary weapon, the voices of your dead family members begging for help. Just put yourself in the shoes of that young boy, Dev. It's past 7 p.m., and suddenly he hears his mother, Nandini, right outside the window. And she says exactly what a desperate, frightened mother would say. "I'm alive, let me in, I just lost my way." It's this flawless, terrifying mimicry completely designed to break your heart and totally shatter your willpower.
These entities know that empathy is a human's absolute biggest weakness. And sadly, this is exactly how Dev's mother, Nandini, was lured to her death in the first place. When she and Rana Saw were stranded outside the village, they managed to hide in an abandoned bus. But what drew her out wasn't a scary monster. It was the sound of a crying child begging for help. She stepped out of safety just to help an innocent kid, and the Bashinde immediately swarmed her. They literally weaponize human compassion.
And just to put their agonizing patience into perspective, look at the time, 4 a.m. When Rana Saw was trapped in that abandoned bus after his wife was taken, the entities didn't just give up and wander off. No way. They surrounded the bus, laughing, mimicking voices, and waiting patiently all the way until sunrise. They have all night, and they will slowly, deliberately wear down your sanity.
Section 3. 2 strategies for survival. Rana Saw versus Babin.
Faced with this insane psychological manipulation, we actually see 2 drastically different approaches to survival. On the one hand, you have Rana Saw's method, which is complete avoidance. Close the curtains, hide, try to go to sleep. But on the other hand, we have this villager named Baban. Now, Baban is basically a skeptic turned scientist. His method is
confrontational observation. He literally pulls back the curtains, talks to the dead, and completely flirts with danger.
Bobbin's terrifyingly calm demeanor during all this is just incredible. It proves that understanding the rules of the curse is just as important as hiding from it. So while Ranasat is desperately covering his son's ears to protect him from his mother's voice, Bobbin is actively engaging with the entity mimicking Nandini. He's joking with her. He's testing her responses. He's basically gathering real-time data on exactly how these monsters operate.
Section 4. Identifying the threat.
During an incredibly tense moment in the source material, Bobbin literally opens his front door to the monster mimicking Nandini. And this prompts a massive question for us. What invisible force is keeping her outside? He opens the door wide and outright invites her in, but the entity just stands there. It freezes. Instead, it tries to convince Bobbin to step out into the yard. So why won't it just cross the threshold?
Well, it turns out these visual and auditory clues form a very strict set of paranormal rules, turning this whole survival situation into a terrifying game of logic. You can literally identify a Bashinde by checking these boxes. First, they have flawless memories. They know exactly who you are. Second, they travel in packs with other dead villagers, even children. But the ultimate absolute tell is their physical limitation. They absolutely cannot and will not cross an open threshold. They have to convince you to cross it instead.
Section 5. The ultimate defense, the sacred bead.
So instead of just chalking Ranasaw's survival up to dumb luck, Bobbin played detective to find the exact object that kept the entities at bay. Remember that abandoned bus we talked about earlier? Bobbin wondered why the monsters could so easily rip Nandini apart outside, but couldn't just step inside the broken, rusted bus to get Ranasaw. So during the safety of daylight, Bobbin hiked out to the bus and found the answer hanging right there.
And this is where folklore brilliantly meets function. Hanging inside that bus was a Rudraksha, a sacred prayer bead. Bobbin realized that it wasn't the rusted metal of the bus keeping the entities out. It was a powerful spiritual barrier created by this specific sacred bead.
So the truth is, Bobbin wasn't just being a reckless thrill-seeker by opening his door. He was actually completely protected by the Rudraksha's invisible shield. Once that bead is hung on the doorframe, the physical threshold instantly becomes an impassable magical barrier. The Bashinde are rendered entirely powerless to enter. That's exactly why the fake Nandini had to stand helplessly outside Bobbin's door, begging him to step out. The rules of the curse are absolute, sure, but the rules of the protection are equally absolute.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a deeply terrifying thought about the true psychological cost of surviving Khandwa village. You know the deadline, you know the visual tells, you know all about the Rudraksha bead. But if it was 7:01 p.m. and you heard the exact voice of someone you loved crying for help just inches away on the other side of your door, would your logic actually hold up against your empathy? That right there is the true genius and the absolute true horror of the 7 p.m. curse.